I'm Nikki Jovicic from Lookupstrata, and I'm also the Managing Director of Tower Body Corporate. Michael Kleinschmidt from Bugden Allen Graham Lawyers is joining us today to talk about per lot fees in strata management. It's a tightrope walk between the strata managers who strive to deliver excellent service while keeping their costs under control and lot owner expectations. So how do we move forward? How can strata managers maintain a healthy business model and keep their clients happy? Michael's here to offer a fresh perspective and to challenge the status quo, which is not like you at all, Michael, is it? Providing practical answers to the per lot fee dilemma. Settle in and get ready to think outside the box. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that the information in this session, including the discussions arising from submitted questions and chat conversations, is not advice and should not be relied upon as advice, and you should seek independent advice before acting on the information contained in the session. We're really happy to welcome back Michael Kleinschmidt from Bugden Allen Graham Lawyers. Michael is a partner at Bugden Allen Graham Lawyers. He has specialised in strata law for over 20 years, and during this time, he served all of the peak stakeholder groups and acted for almost all of the different stakeholder groups in almost every conceivable strata matter type.
I'm going to start from saying that, being in the strata legal profession for as long as I have lots of friends and colleagues who are strata managers. And I know that they're feeling the pain at the moment as a result of what is, in reality, a few bad apples that have come under a lot of intense scrutiny. And, when you become a lawyer, typically you become a lawyer for one of two reasons. You either want to help yourself, bad lawyers, or you want to help other people. And I want to help other people, including my friends and colleagues who are strata managers. So I couldn't help myself in thinking about these issues. I came up with a few suggestions. And there's one particular suggestion I've been making since last year during one of our sessions, and when we were talking about insurance commissions. And so I actually got invited to talk by SCA Victoria down in Lorne a couple of months ago. It was a week before the NET Strata thing broke, and I was down there with Stephen Brell presenting about ethical profitability for strata managers. Now, my suggestions didn't get much airtime afterwards, but Stephen certainly did. So I'm going to talk about a few of those later on during this presentation. And as we say, never waste a good crisis. When there, is there such thing as a good crisis? Crisis is horrible. Everybody hates it. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Take the crisis, use it to effect change, including in a way that makes life better for yourself and your clients. And I'm going to make a suggestion that does that and also is aimed at taking away some of the broader pressure that strata managers are under at the moment. And yes, I know that there's a cost of living crisis. So what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to hit these points. What is the price per lot dilemma? What is it and how did we get here? What are the consequences of the dilemma? So what price pressure means in reality? Escaping the dilemma, which is strata managers are no different to other markets and businesses. There are solutions. I'm going to give you some ideas, some suggestions I made down at the SCA Victoria Principals Retreat. I'm going to talk about the race to the bottom. So the strata managers say to me, but I can try these other techniques that you're talking about, but I'm still going to lose because of this race to the bottom. So my answer to that is raise the bottom, right? Raise the bottom. Let's raise it so that profitability returns, committee expectations are managed properly, and that strata managers have space to adapt their businesses. So how do we do it? Well, I'll explain that in a little bit of detail, including so that you can get on the phone or the email to your favourite SCA board member and give them a suggestion. I'm going to talk about how to get the dog wagging the tail rather than the tail wagging the dog. And I'm going to tell you a tale of success. So the price per lot dilemma, what do I mean when I talk about that? Well, when as a strata manager, you're asked for a fee proposal for a new building or for an existing building, when you go to do a renewal, you do up your proposal, and almost invariably, that proposal consists of a proposed strata management agreement, which is typically long. It's a little bit difficult for lot owners to understand. It's got legal jargon in it. And as a strata manager, that the one thing they're going to look for is, what's the annual price for the strata manager's fees per lot, right? And even if you dress it up in other language, they're going to get the calculator out, and that's how they're going to work it out, because that's the easiest way they know to work it out. And they've been trained to do that over 20, 30 more years. But that's the way they compare apples to apples within the sector. Okay. Now, I know that there are people out there who are trying different business models, and I laud them for it. But that's what I see as the price per lot structure. Because typically these strata management agreements will have a base fee for a certain number of things that you do for that body corporate, that owners corporation every year. You know, you organise the annual general meeting, you do like 4 committee meetings, etc. And so there will be a base fee typically per lot for that work. So, and obviously there's extra costs and expenses that you might do on an hourly rate or a fixed fee per page for photocopying and stuff like that. But the sticker is the price per lot. Now, you know that when you're pricing that building, that you have to stay within a competitive range, or you're going to lose your existing building, right? Or you're not going to get the new work. And you've got to have a portfolio. If you don't have a portfolio, you're going to go out of business. Full stop, end of story. And you know that when the lot owners go to vote, they're going to be even less informed than the committee or the executive is. And they're going to go looking for that sticker. What is the price per lot? And if you are not the cheapest, then you have to have really good reasons that you're not, and you have to communicate your value proposition. And they're all hard things to do every year. You know, in Queensland, that happens every year or a maximum of every 3 years. So obviously then there's this real downward price pressure, and it's a self-reinforcing cycle, because you're always competing. You know, in Queensland, you're supposed to get at least 2 quotes for major spending. Almost inevitably, there's at least 2 fee proposals from strata managers to do the work. And so committees are trying to summarise that, and you're going to see this sort of price per lot figure pop up all the time. And so you get this self-reinforcing cycle of downward pressure on price per lot. Now, if you're a consumer, if you're a lot owner, you're a committee member, and you're watching this presentation, you go, "Ripper, thanks very much. That's great. I'm happy with that." Well, not if you like a healthy strata sector. There are consequences of this. Now, I went and had a look at, like most things Macquarie Bank does, they do a bloody good job of it. And not too long ago, Tim McKenzie, the national head of Strata Macquarie Business Banking, put his name on the 2023 Strata benchmarking report. It's freely and easily accessible. I suggest you go have a look. And I watch these reports just like anyone else in the sector does. Now, price per lot management fees on average, in 2010, they were $185. 2012, $197. 2015, $222. Now, just think about the changes in practice. If you've been around for 14 years, think about what's changed in 14 years, just by the by. In 2018, they went up to $237. Now, between 2018 and 2022, they went up by $3 per lot over a 4-year period. $3 per lot over a 4-year period, okay? So I had a look. Those prices per lot have barely kept pace with inflation over the same time period. In fact, they're 1% below. They've gone up by 29% over that time period, and inflation has gone up by 30%. Well, you say, again, as a consumer, that's great. It means we need to be. Well, no, it's not. Because what Macquarie did was they said, how about we look at profit over that time period? Profit has reduced from 30% to 23% in the same time period. And profit is there to make the business worthwhile to do and to give you a buffer against the vicissitudes of the practice of business. If you're not profitable enough and something bad happens, then you can end up going the way of the dodo. So Macquarie Bank has said that the industry, the strata management industry, has reached an inflection point. So it's a crisis point. Revenue per lot has to increase or costs will be unsustainable, right? That's Macquarie Bank. These guys do the majority of the banking for the sector. They know just about everything about their clients, and that's what they are saying. Now, getting bigger strata management companies, so mergers, becoming more efficient, those things have paid good dividends over that sort of 12-year period. But that road is at an end for the moment. The gains have been made. Macquarie says in their report, and I quote, "To restore margins, businesses must increase their fees and extract tech-driven cost efficiencies." That's what they're saying. So there's still some space in the tech space, right, to be getting some more efficiencies and to make better profit, but you're going to have to increase your fees too, right? Oh, how do I increase my fees in the middle of a cost of living crisis? Isn't that a bit brave? Well, I got some ideas. Before I get to them though, let's finish the story. If strata management companies don't make enough money, then they go out of business. Then there's less of them and there's less competition. And we all know what happens when we end up with less competition, right? Now, my firm and I do work for one-man bands, one-lady bands, all the way through to majors. And we see that a healthy market is a competitive market with lots of different offerings and lots of consumer choice. That's just classic economics, all right? So healthy competition absent abuse of market power is a good thing. So these consequences lead, so with the downward price pressure on per lot cost, and that pricing model leads to strata managers seeking revenue outside of the price per lot directly from the client, for example, extra add-ons and things, or in the case of the bad apples, through revenue paid to the strata manager by third parties that the client body corporate might not know about, but they end up paying for because there's a kickback or a commission or something like that. Okay, so it's direct or indirect. So when you're facing this fee pressure, you've got to find the revenue somewhere. So you find the revenue outside of the price per lot. So then, how do we escape the dilemma? I've never run a strata management business. And I respect people who say to me, well, you've never run a strata management business, so how can you tell me? Well, so I've run a couple of businesses and I think I've done it reasonably well. And when I look at this from an outsider's perspective, I say, well, don't charge per lot. Charge a different way. You could charge pure fee for service. There's plenty of software packages. You can sit your staff down and every time they do a job for a particular body corporate, they type in time on a timesheet. You can give the client an estimate for the work that you're going to do for the year before the year commences, and you can update the estimate as you go. Now, that's what lawyers do. But there's no upside reward. It's all downside risk. A lot of people don't know that about the legal sector, because what happens is that when you re-estimate upwards because something's become more complicated or more difficult, the client hates you, right? And that's why we always give estimates and not quotes, by the way, because it's very, very, very difficult. None of us have superpowers where we can tell what the future's going to be. But the trick is that if you estimate upwards, the client hates you. And if you manage to do things more efficiently and you come in underestimate, you don't get the windfall gain of being efficient, right? If you pass that cost straight through. So it's not a great model, but that's how most lawyers operate, okay? So I proposed that to a number of strata managers, friends and colleagues and people that I know, because I have these conversations all the time. And they say to me, well, yes, we can do that, but it's too hard for the lot owners to understand. They don't like it. They don't, it's too risky for them, and they like to be able to go back to this price per lot thing because it's so well accepted and they're so used to it. And that's what they've done in the past. So then I usually turn around and say, well, what can you do inside the price per lot paradigm to make it work better for you, right? So we're not going to change the universe. We're going to stay with price per lot. So how do we make that work better? Well, I came up with a few ideas for the principals retreat down in Lorne for SCA Victoria. And the first one was, first of all, outsource some of your costs as a strata manager, but do it ethically. Get your clients to use their time rather than your staff's time to do jobs that your staff would usually have to do. All right. Now you can do this with very simple tools like online forms, online voting, electronic communications. All of these things are available through the software packages that are out there in the market at the moment. So you consider an online form. You've got a lot owner who wants to make an application for an improvement to the common property to benefit their lot. They want to put an air conditioning unit on their balcony. Now, you've got a form for that. Not only that, you've got an index of forms in your client portal. You've got Q&A on how to use the forms. The lot owner jumps onto your portal, types up improvement or air conditioner, and then all of a sudden a little article pops up, and then there's a link to the form, and then they fill in their community title scheme number, and the form starts to populate automatically with the information about their community title scheme. It prompts them for a price for the unit, because in Queensland, the price has an impact upon the level of approval. It asks for some photographs or a plan of where it's proposed to be put. And this form collects all of that information. And once it's finished, and the lot owner just says, submit, how much time has your staff member just saved? All right, how much time has just been saved? And what's better, let's imagine that lot owner is an investor lot owner who's presently in Rome, right? They've had a request from their tenant who says, it's been really, really hot, I'd like an air conditioner. And they're doing this at 3 o'clock in the morning, Australia time, all right? So that's their client experience is 10 times better. They can drive the whole thing themselves, all right? It doesn't take any of your staff time. Their client experience is better, and your profitability is better. All right? Why not? The tech is out there. So when Macquarie says tech-driven efficiencies, I'm pretty sure that that's one of the things that Tim McKenzie would agree with me is one of the things that you could be doing. All right, so that's suggestion number one. Now, suggestion number two, provide new products and services within your core business. So within your core business, now your strata managers, you're not electricians, all right? To expand and diversify revenue streams that are running dry, okay? So as a younger lawyer, when I realized that I really liked strata, and I did my first strata scheme, literally when I was sort of a second-year article clerk in Carindale, it was a gated community title scheme. And then I got up the Sunshine Coast and I started working in a boutique property firm. I built my strata practice, and I did that by adding products and services to what I did every year, right? Every time I do a new job, I would go back and I would precedentize that job. I'd write an article about it, and I would make it a product or service that I could provide to people off the shelf, literally. I'd adapt it every time. I mean, a good lawyer will tell you that a precedent is only ever a guide, right? It's only ever a shortcut for some work. And so I would do that every year. And the beauty of that is that you're expanding your offering constantly, so that as things die off, you don't have to worry about them dying off as much, because you've got new products and services coming online. You know, I'm expecting that scheme termination services in Queensland will start to ramp up, right? Whereas problems to do with smoking or pets should start to ramp down with our changes to the legislation, fingers crossed. But, you know, strata, pets, smoking, big problems always. So with this one, be careful though, because these products and services are usually add-ons. So they're still part of your core business. They're still things that you do normally as a strata manager, but they're usually add-on services. So when I was down in Lorne at that SCA Victoria Principals Retreat, and this was the week before the NAT Strata story broke on the ABC, Stephen Brell and I presented on ethical profitability, and Stephen, what he spoke about was the 37 or 38 extra revenue streams that he and the team at NAT Strata had added to the NAT Strata business, which meant that they had all these new revenue streams for add-on services, usually at a fixed rate expressed per lot. You know, so it might be a post-AGM survey to make sure that all the lot owners were happy with the way the AGM occurred and stuff like that. Now, that's not unethical, right? Offering that extra product or service is not unethical. Now, I'm not defending NAT Strata by a long shot, all right? That will play out the way that plays out. What I'm saying is look for those products and services, but add them on ethically and properly. Let the clients see that they're there. Let the client choose if they want to choose. give full disclosure about how they work and what their costs are and all the rest of it. And you know what? Avoid shrinkflation. If I took a bag of chips today and a bag of chips 20 years ago, you know which one's going to be bigger, right? So avoid shrinkflation. If you're doing really well, you can take some of those extra products and services and put them into your price per lot offering if you want to, so that you've got a competitive advantage. People say, oh, you get that. Yeah, you get that as part of the fee. Oh, that's great, you know, but you've got to sell that. You've got to say, we do this extra stuff, for example. Now, third thing I wanted to say, develop pricing for products and services that align with and advance your client's interests with yours, but maintain your professional distance at the same time. Now, simply put, that is, if you can make money when your client is making money or saving money, that's the best, okay? You might hear this term conflicted remuneration. Conflicted remuneration is where you as a strata manager get more if the client, owners corporation, body corporate spends more. And I've seen fee pricing models where strata managers will charge 5% of what, you know, or a fixed percentage of what their owners corporation spend. They want to go and do a $100,000, maintenance job, then the strata manager gets $5,000, right? End of story. Doesn't matter how much work they do, they just get $5,000, all right? Now, I don't advocate for that at all, because there's no relationship between the amount of work that you're doing or the value that you're providing and the amount that's being spent, right? To my mind, it's a really, really, really bad model. And arguably, I say that's conflicted remuneration, because your interest is to earn as much money as possible. Your client's interest is to save money, right? So what I'm saying is align your remuneration where possible so that you both win at the same time. Now, I'll give you a concrete example. Some years ago, for an unnamed client, obviously, I was asked to advise on sending out electronic meeting notices and other notices. So I gave the advice, because this firm was going to be a really good early adopter, right? It's a long time ago. And so one of the issues that piped up was, well, but we charge for these at the moment. How should we charge? And I said, well, why don't you just remove the fact that you're doing this by post and just call it meeting notices, right? And so you give lot owners the opportunity to opt in or opt out of receiving communications electronically. And then reduce your per page price, because they were charging per page, right? On a reasonable expectation that you'll have a certain amount of uptake of the electronic version, because the price per page to send out an electronic notice was like 100th compared to what the postal version was. And I said, you know what? Your client will win because their overall costs are going to reduce. You will win because your profitability on electronic meeting notices will increase. So it's a win-win. Best case outcome. You know what happened? They didn't do it. And you know the only reason they didn't do it? Because they had these two photocopiers in a location that were the size of small cars that were pumping out copies for them. And they had to pay off those two copying machines, and they had it down to a fine art. And I said, look, for God's sake, just take the extra profit, roll it back into the copying machines. And no, we've been doing it that way, and that's how we're going to do it. And I just shook my head. So you've got to be nimble in business. And so I get these strata managers who say to me, I can do all those things you say, but I'm still going to lose business at the front end because of the price per lot, because I don't look competitive enough, right? Lot owners and committees are not going to look beyond that price per lot when they vote to choose us. And my response to it is, look, yes, there's always going to be competition. You're in business, you're always going to have competitors. And yes, there's always going to be someone who's cheaper than you are, you know, and not everybody can be the best and all the rest of it, right? Not everybody can sell a premium service, etc. So I just turn around and say, hey, mate, look, libraries full of marketing and management books. You can go and do an MBA, educate yourself, become a better business person, right? Or, and here's the main suggestion that I want to make today, right? Raise the bottom. Collectively, raise the bottom. Don't race to the bottom. Collectively, raise the bottom. So Raising the bottom means making the per lot price higher and having a majority of bodies corporate willing to pay it. Not everybody's going to accept it, right? But most will if it's done correctly. Now, how the hell do I do that? You say to me. Well, I have a suggestion, but I want to explain where it came from first. And the first place that this suggestion came from, I was asking my strata management friends and colleagues a question, usually sort of small to medium-sized business owners. And I said, hey, do you know what your costs of production are? And they'd look at me and they'd say, what do you mean? I said, well, do you know how much it costs you to service a given client, a given owners corporation or body corporate? And they'd say, yeah, we've got a rough idea. And I said, well, do you keep timesheets? No, we don't. I said, surely you do, because some of these things you charge extra time for. Oh yeah, we keep timesheets in relation to the extra stuff that we charge for outside of our per lot fee. And I said, but how can you know what a given body corporate is then costing you to service? And they say, well, you know, we know when we're losing money and we know when we're making money, but we don't go down to that level because it takes too much time and we're always pressured for time. And then I had once worked in a firm years ago, and who shall remain nameless. And that firm briefly followed a 5-star high octane user pays mantra. Every single business unit in that firm knew exactly what its costs were. Every staff member, every paperclip, including its share of corporate resources. So if you were using the joint corporate team to do billing or debts recovery, your business unit knew exactly how much of that price you were sharing. And you could assess every business unit's individual profitability, in fact, down to the individual lawyer. They had a per chair price per lawyer, right? So you could work out how profitable your individual lawyers were, which was just astonishing. And there were some really funky things that fell out of that. So every year at Christmas, the top 5% profitability clients would receive grade A Christmas presents. And the bottom 5% profitability clients would get the sack. They were gone, right? Gone. The firm wouldn't act for them anymore. And, you know, my uncle, the Bush Tucker man, many, many years ago had said to me, you can starve on celery. You know, the idea being you can eat as much as you like of unprofitable clients, but you're not going to make enough to survive. So get rid of them and let somebody else go broke servicing them, all right? Now, those committee members and lot owners out there that are hearing this, in some cases, I mean you, okay? I don't want to offend you all out of hand, but sometimes it's worthwhile to look at yourself through someone else's eyes. If you're a high maintenance client and you're expecting a budget price, wake up to yourself, right? That's not right. So this cost of production issue, and how do you work out your individual profitability, etc. It's actually really, really simple. And the two indicators of success are raise the bottom, so raise the per lot fee. And second thing is get lot owners to accept it so that it becomes the norm, okay? So here's how you do it. I suggest via the SCAs in each state, what you do is as strata managers, you identify the common tasks that are done for every body corporate each year. So identify what those common tasks are. So there'll be sort of bedrock stuff that is done for every single scheme. Then there'll be sort of almost bedrock stuff that is done sort of 75% of the time. And then there's going to be a whole loop of other stuff, right? So you take that 75% stuff and you just reach an agreement, a negotiated agreement. This is what should be included and this is what should be excluded. Of that sort of initial group of those bedrock tasks, some of them cost the same no matter how big or small the scheme is. So you identify them as a set. Then the rest of that set is usually based on how big the scheme is, okay? You put that thing together into a schedule of tasks per state. Then the SCAs engage an independent third-party consultant to fairly price the performance of those tasks, including to use a time and motion study type approach. So instruct the expert to calculate 3 levels of service. And it might be, you use whatever words you like. I say things like budget, basic, and premium, right? So 3 levels of service. Once the report comes in, you're going to have this pricing for those base tasks, for the sort of per lot tasks, and then you in the process of doing that, you then also have reasonable hourly rates. Okay, reasonable hourly rates. So then what you do is that you change the standard agreement for the engagement of a strata manager in each state to reflect the report and the methodology of the report, right? So that you're pricing based on those works and you're schedulising. But then you add plenty of room for strata managers to put in special conditions. So for example, they can do their add-ons, or they can vary things around, right? Including on a per lot basis. Then what you do is you get the new agreement out there into the marketplace and all the members using it, right? Heavily using it, because that's what educates committees. Remember the turnover on committees. You guys know better than me, but I've got my own ideas. Turnover on committees is real. It happens. You'll get the person who's welded on for 20 years, and then you'll have the fly-by-nighter who just wants to improve their lot, and then they get off the committee, right? So you're always cycling through committees. So you've got to get the agreements out there so that they read them and they understand them. And with these agreements goes a whole heap of stuff like Q&A, explanatory notes, the whole banana, right? So it's really, really good information package, yeah? Then what you do is you promote the living bleep out of the report, right? The SCAs, I notice Queensland particularly is very media savvy these days, right? And just get it out there, right? Use it to educate people. This is what we do. How many times have we said, I find it really, really hard to explain to a lot owner what we actually do, right? If there is anyone on this call that's not been in that position, right, I would be stunned. I find it really hard to explain to lot owners what we actually do. The report tells them what you actually do, right? The core part of what you do. It's not everything, right? But it's the core. Promote the living hell out of it. You have a major campaign directed at lot owners. This is a fair price for the work that we do. You can expect to pay at least this much for a premium service. You can expect to pay at least this much for a budget service. And there's so many things that you can do around this. To consider this one. If someone's charging you less than that, they're a shonk. All right? Now, this is about norms, right? We get the word normal from norms. And norms are all about what the community accepts is right, proper, true, accepted. It is what becomes normal. The price per lot race to the bottom has been normalised. And the industry needs to normalise a fair price. A fair price. So you cannot do that without an authoritative source. Don't get me started on the erosion of truth and what's happened over the last decade, all right? But you've got to create the truth. You've got to sell the truth. You've got to get the truth out there. And it's the real truth. It's objective truth. And I've seen it work, right? I'm going to tell you a story in a minute. Now, this is where I get on to get the dog wagging the tail. Now, I have a beef with Macquarie. I have a beef with them. They're excellent, and the information that they provide is excellent. But when I talk to strata managers, friends and colleagues who are running strata management businesses, and they say, I've looked at the benchmarking report and I've compared myself, and I stop and I go, what did you do when you saw the benchmarking report? Did you put your price up? Oh, no, actually, we maintained, or we cut a little bit, or, rarely do they increase. And I said, you know what? That's the tail wagging the dog. And they say to me, what do you mean? I said, well, do you know what your cost of production is? And they say, no. And then I say, so what you've done is you've taken Macquarie's information and you've used that to make a business decision about what you should price because you want to be competitive per what Macquarie has said based on its information. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I actually have friends who, one in particular, who follows an investment strategy where what they do is they buy investment houses where a new Bunnings is being built. They buy an investment property within 5 kilometres of a new Bunnings. That's their strategy, because Bunnings is, they do all this market research and they jump on the back of that market research with Bunnings. So don't get me wrong, it's a valid strategy. You can operate that way. But Jesus, I wouldn't. I'd want to know what my costs of production were first. And then I'd say, now I'm going to add a reasonable profit margin for my risk, my capital. And then I'm going to turn around and say, now, where does that put me? I look at Macquarie at the end, not the beginning. Now, I'm conscious of time, but I want to tell you a tale. As a lot of your viewers may know, I do work for a lot of management rights operators. And I remember one of the very first jobs I had on the Sunshine Coast when I moved up the coast into 2008. No, it was earlier than that. It was like 2002. And I was looking at a market review for a caretaker's salary. So this is a caretaker of a body corporate who's maintaining the common property, and they had a long-term contract. And part of the argument that was being made is that they should be paid a fair market salary. Now, at that stage, we went out and we got an expert's report, and the expert said this is a fair price, but the expert had to take hourly rates from different professions and blend them all in and do a really complicated expert's report to be able to justify this fair market rate. Now, we didn't win that case. Fast forward 20 years, in the management rights space, there is now the Hayes hourly rate guide. So one of the big HR firms, Hayes, produces an hourly rate guide for the performance of caretaking duties, and it's a blended rate based on all the things they do, right? So you've got an hourly rate. Then there's the ABMA, so the Australian Building Management Association guide, right? And that's been used in a few experts' cases as well. There's an accepted experts methodology for the preparation of time and motion reports for fair market salaries for caretakers. And these days, if I was to have that same fight again, I'd be advising my client that the chances of getting a fair market price on a review were upwards of 75 to 90%, right? Now, what changed? What changed during that time period? Well, these are long-term contracts. So obviously these guys get market renewals. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, but we only get a year. We have to compete market rate every year, etc. Well, this is why I say, at the moment, you've got no tools, okay? You're going into you've bought, a fist to a gunfight, right? And I'm trying to give you at least a knife to a gunfight, all right? Which is, if you get this authoritative third-party source and you promote it and you keep renewing it every couple of years, so you do a fresh one and you get it out there so that it's the accepted benchmark, right? What's going to happen over time is that will become the go-to, right? People will say, this is what these people are doing. So, I'm looking at a new strata manager, right? I want to see what a fair market rate is for the performance of the strata manager's work. So they go look at this report, right? Now, in my vision, it might take a few years to do it, but the end result of that process, because everybody working together achieves the best outcome, right? Everybody working together achieves the best outcome. So a little bit of altruism go a long way. And that's the way you've got to turn it in, so that the self-reinforcing cycle becomes a positively self-reinforcing cycle, so that what happens is when you're sitting there trying to part, a baby boomer, or some people would say these days an ex-gen like me, from money in their wallet, you can say, dude, no, I'm not going to charge you $150 per lot per annum. That was the 2015 price. Here's the report. That's a fair price. And if you don't want to pay that, there's the door, right? There's the door. Because sooner or later, when that's happened 2 or 3 times, that person's expectations will adjust. And you know what? If they walk out your door and someone else does accept them and they charge $215 per lot, one of 2 things is going to happen. That competitor is going to go broke, right? Or they're going to find themselves involved in a scandal. So, ladies and gentlemen, I challenge you. Why should you not do what I've just suggested? I have no interest here other than trying to help my friends and colleagues. So all of that being said, I know that people say, oh, well, I don't trust SCA to do this or SCA to do that. And I'm not pointing the finger at any particular SCA. If you're a strata manager, that's your organisation. Get behind it, support it, join, pay your fees, tell them what you think, right? And use your stakeholder organisation to affect change.
How do you propose dealing with competitors who constantly seem to underprice their management fees to gain market share, resulting in the race to the bottom?
Yeah, that's normal. Okay, situation normal. Okay, my whole point is that if you're starting from a low base and they're undercutting, they're going to kill you. I mean, I've been in business discussions around tables with CEOs of my own and other businesses where we've said, this is our major competitor at the moment. How are we going to deal with them? And at least one occasion, we said we're going to find out their pricing schedule and undercut them to control their cash flow. And that's how we're going to beat them, right? So situation normal. I'm not a business genius. I can't tell you how to escape that paradigm. My suggestion is about taking the bottom from where it currently is so that when you're undercut, it's down here, and raising the bottom to here so that when you're undercut, you're here, which is still above where you currently are here. That's my suggestion.
Okay, we've had lots of comments come in during chat about the responsibility of the lot owners and the committee in making the choice, and I firmly believe that that's the case. Committees and lot owners are the ones that are choosing strata management firms. If you're not happy with your strata management firm, ask questions, find out what's being charged, why. Question them if they're not happy to answer. Maybe then that is a bit of a red flag, and you need to look into that. But there are plenty of strata management firms out there, so it's up to the committee, I think, if they're motivated that way, to make the choice and see value rather than look for the price.
Yeah, and look, this is also about educating the market. I come back to that central question. I mean, I've started to see, and pat on the back for SCA Queensland, at some of their recent events, they've started down that pathway of, look, what do we actually do? And then that's been married up with, you're better off using an SCAQ member, right? So the two things go hand in hand. I mean, the Queensland Law Society did this a decade ago. There were billboards all over the state talking about QLS members and how great it was to use a QLS. Pretty difficult not to use a QLS member in Queensland, but it was a good campaign. This is what stakeholder organisations are for. They educate the public about you and your sector and what you do and the value proposition that you provide, so that then when you're having to fight that fight about engagement, part of the job is done for you.
Most investor owners pay their property managers more than they pay their strata managers each year. What about $800 or $1,000 per lot per annum in the Sydney market on a sliding scale, depending on the number of lots? This will allow a strata managing agent to uphold their fiduciary duty without the need to make additional income elsewhere via vertical integrated service models. And further, it will allow strata managers to manage a reasonable number of buildings so they don't burn out and can properly service them. It's all about the education of the lot owner across Australia, not just New South Wales and Queensland.
Yeah, and look, I didn't have time to go into it, but you can sensitize the report data for geographical location, all right, because costs are different in different locations. If you have a line item cost of real estate, the office, you have to sensitize that for where you are. So when I talk in broad strokes, please don't think that it's ill-considered or, I'm just glossing over these issues. I'm 100% cognizant of it. A good indicator, if you want to have a look at the Hayes Legal Services Industry Guidelines for Remuneration, because it'll talk about the size of the practice and it'll talk about the geographic location. So you can sensitize this stuff in a number of different ways, and you should. But I would say, a little bit tongue-in-cheek with that comment, 800 to 1,000. If the Macquarie one, and this is the tail wagging the dog again, says 250 and you need 800, oh my God, is that mostly insurance? Is it mostly something else? There's a really big gap there. So I don't know, but that's the beauty of this. I don't know, and I don't know anyone that does know, right? Or at least they're not telling me. So that's why I get the report done.
OCs and committees' expectations do not align with the industry practice. Strata managers are not building managers, but OCs think they are.
And that's my education point. Again, I'm stunned that you don't already have this. I would have this booklet. I mean, it's easy for me because I'm a lawyer, and lawyers have been around for so long that everybody sort of fundamentally understands what they do without us having to explain that much. But even still, we do have to, because it's part of our ethical obligations. So, but I'm still stunned that the sector doesn't have a little booklet or a Q&A or whatever the hell it is these days. You know, in 5 years' time, it might be a mind implant that immediately tells you what a strata manager does, right, and what they don't do. But I know, guys, ladies and gents, I feel your pain. The number of times I have to deal with lot owners who have no clue. Oh, you know, you haven't taken out the rubbish bins. Yeah, I'm the strata manager, dude. I'm not the building manager. What are you talking about? This is not investment advice. It's not business advice. This is just me as a business owner sharing my experiences with you, and hopefully it's useful to you in some way. That's my goal. So.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's always a pleasure to have you on and to hear your views. It does create conversation around the topic, which is just what we're after. So we're trying to get people talking about it, and then hopefully we can come up with a solution. If you gained value from this video, please hit like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're looking for information about parking, strata insurance, defects and more, head over to lookupstrata.com.au or sign up to our free weekly newsletter via the link in the description box below.